Hi guys, I'm just going to go over how to make the surgical mask that you can donate to healthcare professionals. I'm going to explain the type of mask that we're going to make, and I think it's very effective. From what I'm told by healthcare professionals I've spoken with, is that it needs to have effectiveness in the sense of protection and also usage. So I'm going to start off by showing you what the prototype looks like, and basically it's a 2-layer cotton mask, but we actually sew in a pocket which allows for you to add a filter in, and that's going to be another 2 layers. It's going to be I'm going to explain what I'm using as a filter. I'm going to show you this is a home filter that you can get at like a Lowe's, Home Depot, even BJ's, places like that. You want to look for the grade that it is. Specifically, you want to see if it catches what type of microns it's filtering. And microns are very, very small, ultra-fine particles. So that's going to be like bacteria and virus. What you do is, it's hard to come by filters obviously online, so what I did was I pulled it out of the casing and then I fashioned it onto a felt wool, and that allows for another 2 layers on top of it going through the cotton mask, and that's now 4 layers of protection. We're just going to go over supplies that you might need to create this mask, and some of the ways that you can create it, because I know some of the supplies are going to be harder to come by as more people get involved and start making masks. We're going to start off with material. Cotton, 100% cotton is going to be the type of fabric you're looking to get. It's the same type of material that's used for scrubs, and also it's really durable, it's breathable, and it's easy to clean. Yards of fabric are not that expensive. It can be anywhere between $4, $8, $11. Really depends on what type you're getting, and you can get a lot out of each yard of fabric. So I think it's something that's great, and it's not extremely costly. So the shape that you're going to cut your material in is going to be an 8 by 7.5 inch. It's basically going to look like a square. It's just a little bit longer going horizontal, and I'll show you why you're going to need that. Some of the other materials you're going to need is going to be thread, and that's you can get an all-purpose thread. You don't have to get anything specific. Get a few because you're going to go through it quite quickly. And then also what you're going to need is something called a bobbin. Bobbin is the thread that's going to be on the under part of your sewing. There is a slot for the bobbin in the sewing machine. We'll go over that a little bit later. But it's really easy if you get the pre-woven packs that you can find at a lot of craft stores. I actually got this at Walmart for really cheap, and they came with 8 pre-round bobbins, which was just time saving on that end. We're also going to go over some of the options of how you can tie your mask, and elastic is obviously the most popular choice, and I think it's really secure in that fashion. 1/4, so a 1/4 inch is the width that you're hoping to get. It's really hard to come by right now because a lot of people who are making masks are buying it up. If you don't have the option to get a 1/4 inch, I would just suggest getting the 1/2 inch, which seem to be readily available, and just cut those right down the center. So now you have 2 strips of 1/4 inch elastic. They don't seem to unwind, so it's still good to get as an option. There's also something called a bias tape, and that is actually another way to secure the mask. It is going to be a tie, so you're going to tie above the head and below the neck, and that's also a good option as well. We know that from the discussions I've had with healthcare professionals, a lot of them are using it, the masks that are getting donated, if they're allowed to have them, to use as extra protection on top of the N95s, which are, they're running low on, the resources aren't there right now. And so this is a great option to put on top of those masks to preserve it as much as possible, to not let it get soiled. And what's great about these masks are with the pocket is that you add the filter in, which would be right here, and you put it right in here. And again, we're doing that's going to be 4 layers of protection. It's still very thin, very breathable. And the way that we're sewing this is that we're letting it pinch on the ends to stay close to the face, but we're also giving enough space in the center to allow for that space to put that mask behind it. Also, what's really important in the surgical masks, they have a nose clip, and that also helps secure it to your face. With this mask, we are going to use Twisty Ties, which is, you can get a pack that's already pre-cut, or you can cut it to a specific length to get the most use out of this, just as long as it's wide enough to get the ability to pinch. Again, you have to understand there's going to be multiple face sizes, face shapes, so a good size length would be great. Again, I got this pre-cut, and I got it at a party store, or you could also find this at craft stores as well as Michael's or something like that. So you're going to sew that into the top of your mask here, and that's going to allow for, again, some extra security towards the face. And what's great about this is as soon as you've soiled your mask, you could take that filter out, throw it away, wash the mask, and then put in a new one once it's clean again. So I think it's great for being able to reuse. So I think it has a longer life there. Now, again, being able to make the masks from the home filters that you're able to, HVAC filters that you're able to buy, if you don't have the ability to find it or it's too costly for you, you can try to find other alternatives. I was able to find a silver aligned dressing that you got at CVS, and this is supposed to be for to fight against bacteria when you have an open wound. It's in the medical section, the first aid section of CVS, and this could be also another great option if you're trying to find something that you might be able to use as that additional protection on the center of your masks. I do not recommend just putting tissue paper or Swiffer pads that some people have suggested. I don't think that that's really going to be any kind of filtering because there's lots of perforations in that material. You want a non-woven material to use as a filter because it's harder for any type of particle to get through that. And remind you, you're still using that extra barriers of additional fabric to protect as well. You're going to want something like scissors, and this would be a thread puller. This is to fix any mistakes, easy to find at any craft store and Joann Fabrics. And this is something that I actually came by accidentally. It looks like a little pizza cutter, and it is so much easier to use to cut your fabric than using the scissors because it's just so precise. It's like an X-Acto knife, really, and it's got this little mechanism to lock it if you don't want the blade to be exposed. What I do is I actually took a manila folder and I just pre-cut the 8 by 7.5 as my template and then put it directly on the fabric that I was going to be cutting. What I did was I just then cut that same thing over and over again using this very sharp cutter, and it saves me the trouble of having to trace and then follow the tracing with the scissors, so it just kind of saves you that time. And the more you're able to pre-cut your material, the better, because you'll be able to make more masks that way. So I highly recommend that. And then again, I'm just showing you the 2 options of how you're going to secure the mask to your face, which is elastic and the ribbon. And again, like I said, you could choose to do one or the other. If you don't have the availability for one, the other one is just as fine. Now we're just going to move on to the sewing machine itself. This is a baseline sewing machine. I was able to get this at Walmart for like $60. You do not need a fancy machine at all. It's going to be a simple stitch that you're doing, so I would actually recommend you just going for the baseline if you see it. This is actually, I brought the box with me. This is a lightweight full-size sewing machine, And it has everything that you're gonna need, so I highly recommend going to some place like Walmart, Target, Kohl's, Joann Fabrics, and just buy a standard baseline machine. I do actually have a cutting board, and that's just for me cutting my fabric, so I'm not messing up my table or anything like that. But if you have something thick like a cutting board, like a plastic cutting board that you're able to use, that's fine. Just make sure that it's brand new, or that it is not something that's contaminated that you've used for other things. But again, we're trying to avoid any kind of contamination while making these masks, which is why I'm wearing the precautions of wearing gloves to make the masks, because I don't want to have the that be an ineffective way as I'm donating these. Again, since these masks are washable, and we're going to be securing the stitches by doing a double or triple stitch, it's great that you can wash them before you put any filters in and have them cleaned. And what I suggest for packaging, if you're going to be sending out, is to use something like a food saver, a food sealer that you can get at like a BJ's or a Target, and that's going to actually keep the mask sterile. You don't have to do that, but I think it would be just an extra step that we could take to when we're providing this, that we're not giving any kind of contamination. Or hopefully the hospital will be able to start implementing taking in donations and maybe having them sterilized by using a laundry service. So I'm going to start with how to set up your sewing machine. Again, for anyone that does not know how to sew but wants to learn, hopefully this will be informative for you. It does not matter what color you go with. If anything, if you want to avoid having to get multiple colors, I would just go for white or a dark black, something that's going to be something that you can use a lot across everything. So I'm using the navy thread because we will do a dark color here. And so this, there are instructions at the top of this machine that show you how to weave your thread into the machine, but to go over it a little bit in depth for you to understand, they're numbered by where you're supposed to start and the steps you're going to take to thread your sewing machine. I'm just going to go over how to do that. So you're going to put your thread spool, and you're going to, this would be number 1, and you're going to bring it along to this plastic hook here just to keep it in place. And that's there is a little little metal hook here, and what you're going to do is follow it. And now it has an arrow saying that you need to bring it down. This is number 2, so I'm going to bring it down, and it's telling me to go around this wheel. That's going to tell how close the stitch is going to be. It's already set at the middle, so I would just leave that there. And then you're going to bring it up because that's what it's instructing to do with the arrows. And now there is a metal hook here that I'd like you to see. And what you want to do is you want to have it up top so that your thread is actually getting hooked in that hooked into the hook. If it's not up at the top for you to see, there is a hand wheel on the right-hand side of the machine, and you're going to use that to control the hook. Control the hook here to go up or down, and that's manually going to move that needle up and down. And so if you're able to see that metal hook at the top there, it's a little easier for you to thread the thread in. So now we're going to bring it down, which would be number 5. And as we get closer to this metal hook here, as we get closer to the needle itself, there is a tiny inconspicuous little hook here again, and that's just to keep the thread closer to the needle, and you're going to want to hook it there to keep it in place. And as you see, the thread should just be able to go right into the eye. And these needles are actually pretty wide, so you should be able to hook it in pretty quickly. And then you're going to leave it there. Just give a little excess here so that you can have the ability to pull it. Now we're going to go over the bobbin. The bobbin is the bottom thread, as I said. And if you don't really have to care about what color that is, just use whatever you have available. But I always just go for white just because I'm never going to change it. Now this is a pre-woven bobbin, and what I'm going to do is I'm going to show you how to set it up into the machine. Again, there's pictures for you to follow, but it is a little bit difficult to understand what they're asking you to do, so I'm just going to go into it in a little more detail. You're going to take this and you're going to have the thread that's aiming up. So you're going to take this and it's going to go sit right into the machine, just falls right in. And you're going to take this thread and you're going to go around to counterclockwise like it says in the picture. And there is a very small metal hook, a silver small metal hook that you'll see right here. And you're going to want to have that thread catch in there. And let me just try to do this. If you get it close enough, it should just catch. Usually it's not that difficult, but with gloves, I think it might be harder to see it as I do it. And so I've got it caught now. And what I'm gonna do is now take this thread that I've had hooked into that section there, and I'm gonna bring it across the metal plate of where the needle is. And it has a little groove that it's just gonna fall in. And you're gonna put it right next to that top thread, and that's gonna be a double stitch. And so now you set up your bobbin thread, and you're gonna put the cap right back on, and it's gonna keep everything in place. And so now you've set up your sewing machine for use. There's a lot of settings that you can choose. This is just on the default. I would leave it that way. It's a tight stitch, and I think that that's secure enough. So don't play around with it too much because I don't think you're going to need to. And now we're going to go into making our first mask. So I'm going to take a bottom fabric, and I'm just going to keep it as a white plain. And I'm going to take, I'm going to be fun, and I'm going to do a print. And so this is going to be my top of my mask, my front of my mask, and this is going to be the back of my mask. Now, when you're creating your mask, again, I said the side that has the longer, the 8-inch is what is the top of your mask. And what is important is to remember is to start it off inside out. So you want it, the back piece to be the top when you're putting it along your fabric here. Again, if you forget to do this, it's not make or break. We're just trying to make as many masks as possible, but it is, there is on prints, it's going to be that you are going to have, you know, a front and back versus doing a solid color, it won't matter. But if you are going to do it, just remember to use it inside out first. I'm just cutting away the excess because it seems that I didn't have the same shape when I first made this. You can see how easy this was to cut away. And so now I have 2 pieces of fabric, identical in size. And again, I'm using that top fabric that has the print, and I'm basically turning it inside out to start my stitch, because we are starting inside out of this mask until we turn it around. And I'm going to show you briefly why we're doing that. Again, we want this to be a secure mask because we want it to be something that you can wash multiple times and last. So I'm going to talk about some of the things we need to pay attention to. We've already threaded, so this is ready to go. But there is a lever right here, a little plastic lever that you want to pay attention to. And what it does is it lifts this metal plate up and down. And when you bring it down, it's going to secure the fabric to not move. This is what you do. You lift it up so that you can maneuver what you're sewing without any pulling or damage to what you're sewing. So I'm going to put the needle where I'm gonna want my stitch to land, and I'm gonna give myself about a centimeter, a little bit more than a centimeter, maybe 1.5 centimeters of allowance, and that's just the extra fabric I'm gonna be having available to me. And there's gonna be a reason why we're doing that. So I'm going to start sewing, and basically, and I wanna show you, your sewing machine is gonna come with a foot pedal. And what you're gonna do is you're gonna be able to have both hands to be able to sew. So that's extremely helpful. If you're very confident in sewing and you don't wanna use your foot, you could actually put the pedal here and use your second hand and just be able to push it down with your hand. I just would recommend using the foot pedal because it's easier. So we're gonna start off with this stitch, and the machine has these little grids here and ridges, and it's gonna kind of hold your material in place. So if you press this pedal, how fast you press it is how fast the sewing is going to go. It will actually feed directly in by the grooves of the metal plate here, so it'll actually go pretty straight if you let it. So I'm gonna start now. And as you can see, if I move my pedal faster, down further, it's gonna go faster. Now, I can turn my material around to the other side. And what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna go over the exact stitch that we just did to reinforce it. And so we're double stitching here. And when we get to the ends, what we wanna do is we wanna just let that thread give a little extra here, a little excess. The reason why we do that is because if we cut too close, the thread kind of winds back up onto the needle and we would have to rethread. So I'm trying to avoid that. So I just give myself a little extra excess there. And so now what we have is that when I pull this like this, it's going to be able to show the front side with the pattern. And that's what we're aiming for. So you're gonna open it up now and you have this little excess here, and we're gonna use that to put our twisty tie, so that we have enough room so that we can make our nose clip. So this is just, now what I'm doing is I'm taking the edges on the bottom of the material, and I'm just gonna give a little hem here. And what the reason why we're doing this is because the fabric that we cut is easily gonna fray, and if you have that exposed quite a bit, it starts to kind of get in the way, and on top of that, with it getting washed multiple times, you just don't want it to start falling apart. So this is a good option to do, and it's just an extra step, but I think it's worth it. Again, it's for the durability of the mask. And so you're gonna take a nice thin amount. You don't wanna use too much of the material. Like I said, you're gonna fold it in twice, and you're gonna take that needle. Now see, right now the needle has gone down too far and I can't push it in. So I'm going to take my hand wheel and I'm gonna bring it up so that I can put my material in, and then I'm gonna put that lever down and I'm gonna just feed it right in. And again, it doesn't really move, so it's actually gonna give you a nice, clean, straight stitch, as long as you're paying attention to how it's going in. And we're gonna turn it around just to do it once over again. Again, we're not looking for perfection. It doesn't have to be symmetrical every single time. As long as it's getting the job done and just tucking that material in a little bit is what we're aiming for. And again, I'm just giving myself a little excess here so I can cut it. And because you went over the stitch multiple times, you know, I know some people are worried that if you cut that material, it's gonna unravel. It's not. You actually have stitched it to secure it so that you're not going to lose that. It's not gonna unravel like that. So again, I'm just gonna fold this twice to get a little hem here. I'm gonna lift this up and just slide it right in. And I'm just gonna feed it right in through the machine. And if you just kind of pinch the fabric down, it's not gonna unwind. And again, it kind of just feeds right in for you, so you're not having to do too much there. Again, we're not having to make it perfect. And I'm gonna turn it around, just go over that stitch all over again. Excess. I'm going to cut that extra material that's been hanging off there. Okay. And again, so we still are using that inside out part right here, as you can see. And now I'm gonna take this and I'm gonna connect them together here. Just gonna fold it. So now we're gonna use the front part of our mask here. Now to just keep everything, again, just for the sake of extra security and just making sure that everything has as strong of a stitch, I'm going to just put a light stitching across the top here, as close to the edge, so that I'm just kind of again, just giving some extra security for how durable this mask is going to be. If you go a little bit past that, that's fine. Don't worry about it. Again, you're just kind of doing a once over. And I'm going to cut that. And now we're going to sew in the nose clip. So I'm going to take the material here. I'm going to take this pre-cut twisty tie, and see this excess that we gave ourselves. We're going to just put it right in the center. And we're just gonna like tuck it away in there, make sure, hold our finger down so that it doesn't kind of slide out or not poking out. I need to bend it to shape it a little bit more to do that. If you don't have the ability to get twisty ties, I think pipe cleaners are just fine, although pipe cleaners are a little bit more circular in shape, so it may bulge a little bit more. Twisty ties I think is ideal. So I have my finger where the two pieces, where the ends are, so I know to start here. And what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna lift up that lever and I'm just gonna put it right where I know that edge of that twisty tie is. And I'm only gonna sew about 1 centimeter in. And then what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna turn the material. So I'm gonna lift this lever up, turn it so that I'm facing it vertical. And I'm gonna put it back down, and I'm gonna sew all the way to where my finger is, where I know the twisty tie has ended. And I'm just gonna turn it again. And again, I'm just gonna go over that same stitch. It's really easy to see where your stitch is, because there's a little spacing where the needle is. Even if you're just basically along the same stitch, it doesn't really matter. Don't get, OCD about how your stitches look. Again, as long as you're securing it properly, that's all you're aiming for. We're trying to make as many masks as possible, so you're just gonna have to forgive yourself with that. And we're gonna cut off the excess. Okay, and now, so our mask is almost halfway done now. What we're gonna do is now we're going to create a fold, and we're basically gonna crease it 3 times. So what you wanna do is about, maybe I think this is a couple centimeters, 2.5 centimeters in. And what you wanna do is you just create a fold. See if I'm folding it right here. You want it to be about 1 centimeter. And you're just gonna do that 3 times. Now again, it's not gonna stay perfectly like that, and it's not going to, because it's actually just for bunching the ends. Now I know that you can use pins to keep these in place, but I would rather not, because I don't wanna puncture the mask. I think that would kind of defeat the purpose in the sense of keeping it as for the security of the sake of not letting any particles get in. So what you're basically gonna do is you're gonna take it, you're gonna pinch it 3 times, and you're gonna hold it. It should be around 9.5 centimeters tall now. And what you do is you take that pinch side, so I'm just gonna do this right here. It doesn't have to be perfect. And what I'm gonna do is about 1 centimeter in. Again, I'm giving myself that allowance because I'm going to need that for putting in my elastic. So as long as the ends are pinched, I don't need to worry about the center so much. I'm going to just sew going across, where I'm not going against the folds. I'm gonna go with the folds. So I'm just gonna let this go over. And instead of turning it around and going over that stitch all over, I'm actually gonna cut right now and then go over in the same direction again, because I just don't want that to catch going in the opposite direction. So I'm going to go for that stitch one more time just for extra security. And then I'm going to cut, and I'm gonna do the same thing to the other side. So what you do this for is the folds here kind of give you that little extra bunching space in the center. And that's gonna be helpful in the sense of having that extra room for the other masks, for the additional coverage. And so, and again, it's for bunching on the side so that you're able to have it more secure along your face. So again, I'm just gonna get that pinch going. Doesn't have to be perfect. If you have something misaligned just a little bit, again, let go of that ego and just say to hell with it, as long as it's got the three folds in there. And that's it gives that little extra security. And it's really hard to do with gloves, but again, I would just rather take that time to do that. So I'm going to, what I do is I just hold it, the folds with one finger as I try to maneuver it to get secure in the machine. And once you go over that first stitch, then you don't have to hold it anymore. But like I said, I'm just trying to make sure I get a good fold here going. So I'm going to run it along my machine, and sometimes it's going to pull the material a little bit more than you want, so just make sure you're still getting that tuck in there, which I do right now. And don't go too fast here, because this is where you do want to just pay attention. So my white material obviously got away from me a little bit, but that's okay. I'm going to cut this and go over it again. Again, you're going over that same folds just for that extra security. You know, it's not going to look perfect sometimes, and this just happened to get a little extra material that was out, but that's fine. So now you have a material where it has a little extra pocketing in the front, as you can see. Now it pinches on the sides and gives you that little extra space, and that's where your filter and having that ability to let that other mask get protected by having that space for that. So we're almost done now. What we're going to do is I'm going to take elastics, because that's the choice that I like to use. And I'm going to take my first one, and I've seen different versions of how people do this. Some people are using fabric like the ribbons, and they're just going all the way across, and then they're stitching this whole thing in. Now the problem with that is that you're using excess material that you're not actually having a purpose for. So I would avoid that, because again, with so many limited resources as people are buying the stuff, it's making it more difficult to have the products that you need to make as many masks as you want. And I'm trying to aim for as many masks as possible. So what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna take my excess that I had from my stitch on the sides, and this is gonna help tuck away the frays. And so I'm gonna take my first 1/4 inch elastic and about a centimeter and a half of material, and I'm gonna take that excess and fold it over. Now what I wanna do is, again, you're just gonna pinch it with your finger to keep it in place, to make sure the elastic is staying in place where you want the stitch to go over. I'm gonna just slide it right in there. And as long as I know the needle's gonna hit right where that elastic is, that's what I'm aiming for. So a little bit past the edge of that material, just so that I can make sure I'm stitching down the elastic to stay in place. So I'm gonna do that, and I'm gonna go across once. And I'm gonna directly turn it around quite quickly, and I'm just gonna go over it again. And now I know that elastic's gonna stay in place. Now I stopped at the edge of where the fabric ends, and I'm gonna turn it, and I'm gonna make it go down vertically. And this is just gonna bring and tuck in the rest of that material. And I'm gonna stop maybe about a 1/4 way down before it ends. And you're not gonna use the second piece of elastic here. You're gonna take that elastic from the top, and you're just gonna bring it all the way around. So you're kind of just going back and using that same elastic you started with to do the bottom half. So I take that excess material, and again, it's a little harder to see with the gloves, but I'm gonna take the excess material, I'm gonna tuck it right in there, and I'm gonna bring my gloves a little bit tighter so you can see without that little excess there. And what you're gonna do is you're gonna take this, tuck it right in, pinch that right there until you get closer to the sewing thread. By the time you get to the plate, you're gonna let it go because it's still kind of pinching there. And you're just gonna let it go all the way almost to the edge while you're going onto the elastic there. So you've already now secured it. You're gonna turn it, keep this out of the way so you're not stitching on top of the loop, but you still have the elastic in there. Bring it down and just go across once or twice. Again, stop where the material ends, bring it in, and you're just securing that elastic. So I would go over at least once, twice, maybe even 3 times to keep sure that you've caught the elastic in the fabric and it's not gonna go anywhere. And again, you're gonna do the same thing. You're gonna go right to the edge of the fabric and you're gonna bring it down again vertically, and you're gonna just go across again. That is probably a triple stitch at that point. And to end it, you're just gonna go to the edge, turn it again so that you could just go to the edge and cut. Okay, and we're gonna do that to the same side, the other side now. So again, I'm gonna take this material and I'm just gonna go over the same exact thing that I did before. I'm gonna take this material, I'm pinching it with my finger to keep it in place. About a centimeter and a half. Centimeter is good. Now, again, for girls, if you know you're going to be making some for a smaller face, 7.5 inches of elastic is a good choice. You want it to be tight enough where it's not going to go anywhere. Although I've been told that it's not a one-size-fits-all. Even though it's elastic, they're wearing it for extended periods of time. So you don't want their faces literally with so much pain because it's pinching their ear so badly. You want it definitely to be tight enough that it's not going to go anywhere, but you do want to give some pull, some give for them to not have it hurt their faces and their ears too much because they're trying to wear it as long as possible. So we're going to go across to get that elastic in. Again, I'm just going over it twice. So it actually didn't catch that first time. I just want to hold that in place and put it down. Okay. And I didn't catch it. And it's because now I didn't even notice, but the thread actually came out of the needle, and that's why I wasn't getting a stitch. So when that happens, that usually means that it just came out of the needle eye. So I'm just gonna pull the top thread here and just basically reset how my thread is threaded into the machine. So I'm making sure I get that thread right into the hook. I'm bringing it back down. I'm remembering to put it in that metal hook right there. Again, that just kind of keeps it closer in place. And it's always easier to put it in when you have a nice clean edge. So I usually cut before I'm gonna thread it into the eye, so it's just a little easier for it to go in, because frayed pieces have a tendency to be a little bit more difficult to thread right back into the needle. And so I'm just gonna put that right in there, and it's actually surprising that it's not as difficult to get in here because the eye of this needle happens to be quite wide. And as long as it's gone through, I just pull it to make sure that it's now re-threaded. And I just want to make sure where my bobbin thread is. And right now it's not hooked into the plate, so I'm going to bring it back and rehook it and just place it right next to that top thread. And that's what you want. Give yourself a little extra room there. And so now I know when I sew, this is going to catch and actually get the stitch in. So I'm just, again, holding that elastic in place, bringing it down so that I can stitch the elastic in place. And I'm gonna turn it around again, see, so I knew that it caught this time. And that's gonna happen occasionally. Your thread's just gonna come right out. It's gonna be frustrating, but as long as you know how to rethread, you're in good hands. So you could always just rewatch this video to remember how to rethread. And so I'm just kind of going a little bit faster on this edge because we've already seen what we're supposed to do, but we're going once, twice, maybe 3 times over on the elastic to keep it in place. Bring it down vertical, go across. Now, with this extra bunched material, the machine is actually going to have a little bit more difficult time getting across, but as long as you're going nice and slow to get it in there, even if it means repositioning, you can do that. You just bring that lever up, tuck it back in, and you go across. So I just went a little slower there because I knew I was going to need that. And then I'm going to take the other edge of the elastic, and I didn't give myself enough room, so I'm going to use the manual wheel to bring the needle back up a little bit so I have room to tuck in. And I'm going to bring that lever back down. Don't forget to bring that lever down, because if you don't, the needle's just going to go everywhere. So you bring it back down, you're holding that elastic in place, and you're just going to go till you know that the needle has hit the elastic. And then you're going to turn it so that you can go across. Again, just make sure it's hitting that elastic and keeping the loop out of the way. And you can do once, twice, 3 times, whatever you think is going to secure it a little bit more. And I might have folded that a little awkward, but that's fine, no biggie. And I'm just going to go down my stitch one more time to get some of that frayed pieces to sit more closely to the mask. And I'm almost at the edge here, so I'm going to go over and I'm just going to turn it again. And let it go. And now I can cut it. And we have made our first mask. Good job. And so now you see, this is where it can shape the top, so it gets a little bit more security and shape for the nose. You've got a pocket now, and you'll allow enough space to put a filter in. And again, so what you can do is you can fashion these by, what I did was I took the HVAC filter, which is kind of folded into an accordion style, and use gloves when you're doing that, because again, you don't want to contaminate the filter. And what you want to do is you want to take that, you want to sew it onto a piece of felt. Again, that's an extra piece of fabric. And what you're going to do is you're going to take this and you're going to put it right into this mask here. And it's going to fit right. You want to cut the shape so that you know how much you're going to allow for it to fit into your mask. And there is plenty of room in here. And now you have some extra protection. And again, it is a lot of security along the face here on the cheek, and also on the nose, staying close to the face. And it's also got that multi-layer filtering and fabric. So I just generally think that it's going to be very secure. Now you see these tiny little pieces of thread. Again, don't be afraid about cutting some of the excess off, because you stitch it so many times, you're going to have a secure mask. And this will last through washes. I've already tested it out, and like I said, that's why I go maybe even 3 times on stitches, because I think it's just more for knowing that it'll last through a wash in the washer and dryer and everything. And I think it's great because, like I said, it's about durability and it's about protection. The only thing that you're going to be pulling out is that filter, and then you'll resubmit a new one in. Again, you can do that, or you can do it again with the ribbons. The ribbons, instead of going and looping around, you would just be doing one piece on each side, securing it. Again, you do it multiple times.